Okay. I see that we've started recording. Good evening, everyone. This is the February 2021 meeting of the Town of Niskayuna Task Force on Racial Equity and Justice. Let's proceed. I welcome everyone and I call our meeting to order. We'll start with a brief roll call of all of the members of the task force. So please just say aye when I call your name. Arinka Abad.
Aye.
David Amadeo.
Aye.
Elizabeth Paul. She's got an excused absence. Jamie Puccioni.
Aye.
Jillian Margolis.
Present.
Thank you. John Lemmeling.
Present.
Kay Bodhankar.
Present.
Larry Ritter. I'll note no response from Larry. Priti Irani.
Present.
Sandra Griffin.
Present.
Devon Wembley. I'll note no response from Devon. Alan Gadsden has an excused absence. Angela Antikowski.
Here.
Dr. Hayward Horton.
Here.
Okay. And the roll is called. We'll note that we have a total of 4 absences. However, we maintain a quorum with 11 full members present. We'll move forward with the vote on the approval of our last minutes from the January 13th, 2021 meeting. Those minutes were submitted to all members. Does anyone wish to discuss the minutes at this point? Please just indicate if you wish to make a statement. Okay, see no hands were raised and no text messages have been sent. Do I have a motion for the approval of these minutes?
Motion
I'll
to
motion.
approve.
Okay. I received several people motioning. I'm sorry, I think David was the first voice that I heard. Do I have a second for the approval of the minutes?
Second.
Thank you. I think that was Pretty.
Angela.
Oh, okay, Angela, I'm sorry. So is there anyone who, so I'll take a quick vote then. I'll just call out the names as I see everybody on the screen. Arinka?
Approve.
John?
Approved.
David?
Approved.
Jillian?
Approved.
Pretty?
Approved.
Doc?
Approved.
Jamie?
Approved.
Angela?
Approved.
Kay?
Approved.
Sandra?
Approved.
The minutes have hereby been approved by a unanimous vote of all present. At this time, I will move forward on the agenda and ask Kay to give us an update as to communications.
Thank you, Dale. Just a quick update. This is something that we had discussed at the last task force meeting regarding a shared inbox for soliciting any public comments. We have that email set up now. I want to thank Lisa and the town staff for helping us out with that. The email is taskforce@niskayuna.org. And starting with the next meeting, we would be putting this email in the same spot where we put the meeting link for the public. So members of the community can send us their feedback or comments or questions using that link. Please note, as this was noted in the last meeting, we are not directly allowed to interact with the media and the members of the community. So this is right now only a place for them to send us comments. We have some more questions to the town, regarding future meetings, some Google Meet settings, as well as forms and survey platforms. We're awaiting answers on that, and once we have those answers, we will share them with the task force. Any questions?
Nope. Thank you, Kay.
Could you repeat the email again, please?
Sure. It's taskforce@niskayuna.org.
Thank you very much, Kay. At this time, we will move forward on the agenda and ask Jamie and Ari to give us an update as to the process of having interns work with us.
Okay, Ari and I met a few times to develop a process for integrating interns into our task force work. And I will go ahead and share what we've come up with to date. So we recommend that we have a total of 5 interns, Niskayuna residents, 2 high school students, 1 junior, 1 senior, at least 16 years of age, 3 college students who can range from freshmen to seniors. We encourage applicants from marginalized racial and ethnic backgrounds to apply. We propose that our interns work for a semester length, approximately 12 to 16 weeks. And we anticipate that the interns will work 1 to 2 hours per week on work group activities. We describe intern activities, potential activities, as supporting in the conduction of literature reviews and relevant current events, support in the collection and analysis of data. This may include graphs and data displays, analysis of interview data, document review. We also anticipate they can help organize online documents, and additional activities would be dependent upon the work group needs. We propose that interns apply by submitting a resume, a response to a written prompt, teacher letter recommendation, and we were a little unsure about a transcript because if students submit a transcript, then that would indicate we have some sort of GPA recommendation, or we would be conducting some sort of analysis of transcripts. So we're taking that under consideration. With regard to recruitment, we would like to post the job notice, or relay the job notice to Niskayuna High School, town newspaper, town website, and share the notice with local colleges and universities. We propose that we will continue to be the liaisons for the interns, and we are thinking that we will collect, we'll have applications, and Ari and I will review them and make recommendations to the leadership team. And We will also prepare a rubric for the application process, as well as a rubric for the intern evaluation. And we've prepared a timeline to potentially have interns begin working with us in the summer. And I think I've covered it. Ari, is there anything else? Is there anything I missed that you want to add?
I think you nailed it.
Okay. So we've gotten it written up, and we can share that. Did anybody have any thoughts on the GPA requirement? I'm hesitant to have a GPA requirement, but if anybody had any particular thoughts, passions, recommendations.
Hi, this is Angela. First off, I'd like to thank you and Ari for your work on this. I think this is really important work. I think it's important for us to keep in mind that there are systems that produce inequity, and so we may not want to use those same systems as a rubric. And so, the GPA issue could be one of those systems, and so I can appreciate that. Yeah, I can understand why you are on the fence about that. So it makes me think about how this would be a great partnership with the area STEP programs like the Union College, Albany Med, SUNY, and I think RPI still has their STEP program, but I'm not sure. So the STEP program, just for those of you who don't know, I think it's science, technology, or maybe it's the STEM or the science, technology entry program. And these are programs that are part of the New York State grant program. There's also the C-STEP program. So it's the STEP program in the colleges. And, these are programs that are targeting and focused on students from minoritized, marginalized backgrounds. And so this would be an opportunity, because I think, some of the STEP programs have done a really good job of being able to have like the criteria without sort of engaging in the types of inequities that I think we are all trying to avoid to some degree. And so I think it would be an interesting opportunity, and I certainly don't want to, obligate the STEP programs to that. And I'm sure there are other people on this call who also know folks who are working with STEP, but it may be an interesting opportunity to partner in terms of having interns that may be representative of those populations. But I'll stop there.
Thank you for the recommendations, Angela. They are written down, and I will probably follow up with an email to you.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Sandra, and I just wanted to get some clarification. The students that we'll be looking at is the requirement that they be Niskayuna residents?
Yes, we are recommending that based on our meeting last week. Many of the task force members articulated a desire to prioritize Niskayuna residents. So that's what we recommend. Do you have a strong feeling for or against that recommendation?
No, I'm just trying to think. Since Niskayuna does not have a large population of marginalized or minority people, the people that you could end up having on your internship may not represent the goal that we're trying to meet. And so I'm asking if that same standard will be used for the students at Union or any of the other schools, because they may not be from Niskayuna. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. So Sandra, so you can be a part, let's say, of the RPI STEP program, even if you don't live in Troy. You could live in Niskayuna, and you could be a part of the RPI program, or you could be a part of the Albany Med program, even if you don't live in Albany itself. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking
sorry.
if we're opening this up to students with the preference that they be from Niskayuna, the minority, I'll call it that, the minority number of students in Niskayuna is very, very limited. So if you want to go and canvass Union or any of the other STEP programs, those students may not be from Niskayuna. So that's...
Yeah, I agree. I think one workaround may be to start with a lower number of students. And really, I think Jamie and others will see exactly sort of what the supply is.
We could know. Sorry, Angela, go ahead.
I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead, Angela. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying it too. If we, have a targeted search, I agree. I think while we have a lower number of minoritized and marginalized underrepresented children, and when I say underrepresented, I mean individuals that are Black, African American, Latinx, and Native American. So while we may have, let's say, from an ethnic and racial perspective, a lower number of those children, we may have 5. And so we could start smaller in the numbers, or we could even, have more of a targeted search. We can go to those areas where we know that, marginalized, minoritized folks in Niskayuna, we know where they are. We are them. and then we can target and we can see what those numbers are.
I'm also wondering, it's a really good point you raise. I have 2 thoughts. One, we are the potential population of students we're drawing from is from 6 years of students, from juniors, seniors in high school, freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors in college. So that might expand the potential pool. And the second thing is that we could note that preference will be given to Niskayuna residents.
Yeah. I think
Jamie, I'll just note for the record that David raised his hand some time ago.
Sorry, Dave.
So, David.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Yeah. So, Jamie, in response to being on the fence about the GPA, I thought a possible workaround there would be to ask the applicants to secure a couple of faculty recommendations, perhaps, that could attest to their passion in the work instead of making it a GPA, strictly an academic measuring tool or bar to make it about something else. And at least if we made it their responsibility, the student intern's responsibility, to seek out faculty members for recommendation, we might end up with a better outcome there. Just a thought.
No, that's a great thought. And I mentioned it, and because I didn't share my screen, you probably didn't catch it in the details. But yes,
Sorry.
That was, no, don't apologize. I realized I probably should have shared my screen. That was one of Ari's suggestions instead of using.
So one
idea.
One would be kind of like the counselor for like high school students usually.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they go first, right? And then the other one could be like one of their teachers, like English teacher or science teacher or
Love it. Great idea.
So it's important just to get, like the recommendation in there.
Thank
and
you.
if I could also just add to that, I think whenever we have an indicator, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we want to know? And then see if there are other things that can get us there. So meaning with the GPA, I'm just saying, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we think that the GPA represents? And then are there other ways that we can get that? So for example, we know that students of color may be more involved in, let's say, a community service. And so maybe that's what we want to see as a rubric, and maybe, but again, what is the construct? I'm guessing, in GPA, I'm assuming think that means something about organization, time management, dedication to a particular goal, whatever we think that means, or what that's supposed to mean. Of course, we know it doesn't, but then I think maybe we can find like the proxy variables that would stand in for that, which may be, recommendations, although we do know for students of color that there's quite a bit of bias in the way that recommendations are written, but still, we may find that there are other proxy variables that help us get to whatever it is that we think that, GPA represents.
And Angela, that's a great point. You just made me think, depending on the number of applicants we get, how much work this will be for Ari and I to manage. We could consider a short interview, and that might be another way.
Sure.
So we're taking this all of this under consideration. We'll continue to write up the documents, but our goal, Ari, this is going off the top of my head. I think you wrote this down, but I'm not sure the timeline is. Our goal is like the middle of March to have this kind of completed and ready to send out to various sources, so that by the middle of April, we can have a range of applicants that we will review. And so by the middle of May, we'll have decisions ready and notify individuals who will be selected to be interns to then begin working with us sometime in mid-June. That sound right, Ari?
Yeah. Not only that, but also we talked about like a short personal statement or essays where the student can show their skills, right? Like their personal skills as of their writing, their mission, their objectives in life, their community service, and why are they a good fit for the program, right? So why are they so interested on join us or in internship with us? So I think along the lines of what Angela said, it can also prove a little bit of the GPA, right? Like in the redaction of the document on how well they write this paper too. So we are thinking of all the goods and the bads and tightening everything that we can in order to bring in a more students that are actually in the marginalized population, that they really want to participate, because that's what we are for, right? We're trying to bring the equity part of it, diversity, inclusion, and justice, as well as race. So we're looking at all of that, and we're encouraging that to come up.
Pretty, your hand is raised.
Yes, I had kind of a connected question. One was to clarify what Sandra asked first, and also I'm wondering, is this going to have some kind of a stipend attached to it? That's one question. And the reason I asked that, say, like Sandra said, our population of marginalized students or community, may be smaller. And so if we had, say, two students that we're trying to choose between, one who's marginalized but is from Schenectady, and one who is not marginalized but is from Niskayuna, how would we decide? I put both these questions together because sometimes the stipend is necessary, and that's why students who are often marginalized cannot take up offers which do not offer a stipend. So I guess that's my two question is, how, if we say preference to Niskayuna, does that mean we'll exclude Schenectady? And if we have two students choose from, one really are from a group that we're trying to reach out, but they're just 2 miles down the road because they're in Schenectady, which one would we choose?
I think that's a good question, and I'm not prepared to answer that because we will think about that in the rubric that we create.
Mm-hmm.
but it's at least for me, I'm not prepared to answer it. Ari, you have thoughts?
Well, we discussed a little bit of the internship being unpaid. So we will actually issue a certificate of achievement at the completion of the internship. And also we will give you a letter of recommendation. So there wouldn't be no stipend there's no economic remuneration, because we don't have economic remuneration. We're on volunteering basis as well. Unless, well, we look for funding or trying to find it through the town if they can provide that to us. But I think that the letter of recommendation and the certificate of achievement for the internship, it will be great too. And that could be also work out with the college to try to see if we can like provide it a credit for it, or like community service credit or something like that.
That's a really good point about stipend. Maybe we can look at some grant funding with,
Right.
as this gets going with, what is it, like NCAP, or if colleges have a work study program, then a lot of times we can connect with the work study program. But I mean, that's an excellent point that's brought up around the fact that these kinds of opportunities often are not an option for let's say, like minoritized college students, because they have to work or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is another option here, and that is if you connect with internship program at one of the local colleges and or universities, students will get college credit for it in lieu of payment, and that is an incentive. And also I know that at certain schools, I know at SUNY Albany, there are a number of disadvantaged students. I don't know how many are from NISBU, and I would probably guess relatively few. But the bottom line is that there's a way. Although I would like to know, I don't think the question was answered. Is this a paid internship or not? Do we know?
We have it described as an unpaid just because of we are volunteering, but there's also some research that if we go through that route, we might have to be getting involved with labor standards and all of that stuff. So I'm not sure if that is something that we want to take on. So that's why I put the link in the very bottom. I don't know if we didn't get the time to look at it. That's a good point, but usually the unpaid internships also had some ethical part of it, that they have to meet certain criteria. And all of that criteria has been met through the description that Jamie has gone through with for the internship.
I see.
But and Dr. Horton, Ari did, I didn't articulate it, but she made a very big point of, in our meeting, tying the internship to the internship offices at local colleges, because there could be credit awarded. So yes, that's why we want to connect directly with those offices. The one thing I want to keep in mind is we're all really good thinkers and big thinkers, and there's aspiration, and then there's what we can realistically implement in a really brief timeline. Yeah. So we're going to take these thoughts into consideration, but also keep in mind that we really want to make sure we can begin this process in March so that we can have interns for the summer and move forward. So it might be the case that for our first group of interns, we have a more smaller, scaled back vision. And then as we learn and we get better at it, we could maybe incorporate some of these other partnerships that people are mentioning, and searching for grant funding to pay a stipend, and so on and so forth. But what I don't want us to do is get bogged down in being overly aspirational that we don't get this accomplished. So if we don't incorporate some of those ideas, I just want you to know that we hear you, but I'm trying to balance being
Realistic.
practical with aspirational.
And also,
John?
I think Angela brought a good point. I'm sorry, John. Angela brought a good point. We can do like probably small donations for the interns, like from NCAP, and they can be like gifts. Is there gifts like, I don't know, $100 or $200? You know, just kind of like saying thank you for this service, this community service. It's an incentive that they can still use as a gas money or something like that. But we want to, again, I am with Jamie, we want to make it realistic, and especially for the terms that we are serving and so forth, to have some solid base and work, you know, in good ground.
John? You're muted, babe.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. I love interns. It's a great way also for them to grow and get experience with working in this kind of form. So I think it's wonderful. The only thing I would encourage, I think 5 is a lot. So I would encourage just be really clear about what the tasks are. Make sure that we really need 5. Make sure it's clear what they're going to do, what they're going to accomplish, and who their supervisor is. Because as we all know, you know, it can be a lot of work just to manage and make sure that the interns have a really good relationship and really good experience. So I would encourage you to consider starting small and make sure that we can, you know, keep them busy and make sure it's a really positive experience for everybody. But I think it's a great idea.
Thank you for that, John. The only, you know, 5 popped into my head because we sort of have like 5 main task work groups that are related to like specific town items. But you know me, I'm a big fan in starting small, having success, and then getting a little bit bigger. So, so yeah.
But we also have taken in consideration the knowledge that they're bringing in, right? Like a student from high school has a different type of knowledge or limited knowledge compared to a 1-year college and a senior college student, right? So among them, they can also share this knowledge and help each other and be more practical. So that for me is very important to just not only work with the group, but they can be one high school and one college student, so they can feel the experience in the process of the real world.
Dale?
Yeah, I have a question for Paul, and it's resulting from Arinka's comment about the possibility of taking in donations and maybe giving something of value to an intern. And I'm concerned that that may generate, number one, reporting requirements or some financial reporting requirements or some other accounting responsibility, since we are a volunteer group. And actually, as a volunteer group, we don't really have public funds coming into us, nor are we receiving remuneration or a budget at this point. So my question, it's long-winded, Paul, I apologize. Would taking in donations and maybe giving something of value to interns generate reporting requirements or some other requirements for us, the task force itself?
So I'll give you the short answer. I don't know that answer, but you can't do what I can tell you what you're suggesting you cannot do.
Okay.
You can't remunerate people with money, whether it's donations or not with a committee and volunteers.
Okay.
The idea of possibly giving them credit or somehow working with the school to authorize credit is great, but financial, no.
Okay.
I certainly think that that's worth investigating, only because I serve on other sort of volunteer organizations, and we do something similar. Again, it's on a very small scale. I mean, like, we don't need to think big on this, but even if we can't, which is fine, I just think it's important to recognize if we apply the same system of inequity to something that's supposed to work against that, we make it the same results as those systems of inequity. So it's just more of a meta conversation, I suppose, for us to just think about. That's all.
I totally understand. It's easy.
Yeah,
If we employ the same systems, we can reproduce systemic inequity. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Kay has her hand raised.
Yes. Thanks, Jamie. I also wanted to bring attention as we're discussing this that last month the town itself had released this invite to the youth representatives of the school and kids in first year and second year of college to some of the community programs and some of the committees of the town. And from a plain reading of that invitation, it sounds like it is a volunteer position. There is no payment, though no stipend mentioned in that position. So we might want to take note of the fact that that program within the town is not offering any any stipend for volunteer positions, purely volunteer positions. And if we want to be in line with something like that, since again, we're a town committee.
So it sounds like, does anybody else have anything else to add? Questions? I'm looking at the time, and you know me, I like to move us on because I want to make sure we get to everything on the agenda while we're still fresh. So thank you for all of that. We will continue, Ari and I will continue working on that, and maybe have something to share so that if there's any further comments on, like a Google Doc, then we could do that. Okay, so I'm handing it back over to you, Dale.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jamie. We're going to go back one item. I sort of jumped over workflow procedures that's on the agenda, and it may be poorly titled. It was the title that flew off the top of my head, and we discussed it briefly. And really, it's about timelines and requirements for our reporting to the town, and also a process for work groups to work with the leadership to get things done and report to the leadership, so that we then report to the town exactly what's going on with the task force procedure. And I sent off an email this afternoon to everyone containing this list of suggested task force work process timelines. I'll note that our leadership reporting to the town, as we were advised by the town attorney, Mr. Paul Briggs, at the last meeting, we will be making quarterly reporting to the town every 3 months. A member of the leadership group will report our progress at a monthly board meeting. And our first reporting will be done in March. That's the end of the first quarter for 2021. We will also, as stated in the bylaws, provide annual reporting to the town board in June of each year, since we were started in June of last year. We're also asking work groups to report to the leadership committee monthly, with the chair of each work group or co-chairs meeting at our monthly leadership meeting, which takes place 1 week after the general meeting, and collaborate with us and let us know the progress of each work group at that meeting. And work groups will also be required to develop quarterly and annual targeted goals and report again to the leadership and the full task force at quarterly intervals about progress. Because I just sent it out today, there hasn't been any feedback, and I welcome any comments for those goals, those targeted periods, which sort of have developed naturally at this point, based on what we've been told. So any questions, comments, statements?
Dale?
Yes.
So quick, when you want work groups to report to you, it may help to have some kind of template so we're all reporting the same things. So if you kind of give us an idea of what information you're looking for, then we can report to you. Like you said March, which is next month. So if you kind of give us an outline, that would be helpful.
If you wish, I can do a written outline as to what we expect, but I don't want it to be, I'm not trying to have it that regimented. I'm hoping that the work groups are meeting and discussing what they're doing and actually producing work. And so the leadership committee is just asking that you give us reports, and if you need information or if you need our resources, because we're the conduit to the town, and then we'll work together to get things done. So if you wish, I will send out a template, and I'll collaborate with the rest of the leadership committee, and we'll send you a template no later than next week after we've met, for everyone to use just as a guide. Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, silent. So we'll move on then. And I'm going to turn it over to Jamie for a update on the work groups. Thank you.
Let's see here. Nope, I don't want to do that.
Jamie?
Yep. Can you see this document here?
Yes, it just came up.
Okay. Okay, so I think this also might help, this discussion will help think about Preeti's, a response to Preeti's question and what should we be presenting? So work groups. A few months ago, John had shared a roadmap with us that he was using to help structure the public safety work group, their work, their process, their structure, and so on and so forth. And he graciously created that and shared that with us. And their group has experienced success. They are being very productive. And we have moved from recommendation to each work group should complete the roadmap, because the roadmap helps clearly delineate the objectives, how they're aligned with the task force charge, and it provides a proposed timeline and that's aligning the objectives to measurable outcomes. So completed roadmaps for several groups are available on our Google Drive. And if you need to take a look at one, if your work group has not completed that, you can take a look at an example on the Google Drive. You could also reach out to John and ask for his most recent example. So I think in our first meeting with a leadership group as a work group, sending your representative, you're going to want to discuss the content of your roadmap, the structure of your work group, the leadership. We'd like to see a 6-month timeline with objectives and measurable outcomes. Some things that we want to clarify is it's very important that we start thinking about the data we want to collect, and to give Kay and John a list of the data that you want. And Kay has a tracking mechanism for these requests, and start thinking about how else you want to collect data so that when you meet with the leadership committee, we can help problem solve that with you. The working group chairs will meet with the leadership committee each month to report on work to date. And we are really getting to the point where we need to get down to the business of collecting data and analyzing data. I know in previous meetings I have said this is a marathon and not a sprint. And now we are getting towards the part of the race where we all need to revisit our commitment to this task force. I know that we all have our work lives, our professional lives, our personal lives, but I want to remind everyone that we volunteered to participate in the task force. And now that the working groups are created, it's time for us to recommit ourselves to this task. And, there's some of us who are spending hours a week. Every week we're spending hours doing task force work. And I really encourage each of you to think about how much time you're allocating to this commitment and think about how you can allocate more time to doing productive work. So I'm going to leave it there. As you note, as I discussed earlier, we anticipate interns working 1 to 2 hours a week. And I'm really hoping that we can each start committing to that level of work. And so now that with that said, I'd like each working group to present a brief, update on what has been accomplished to date. And that's that. So public safety, John, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jamie. I've given these before, but I'll make it brief. It's great to see everybody, by the way. So the Public Safety Working Group, as I've mentioned in the past, we've been focusing primarily on supporting the town's police reform collaborative. As we've talked about in the past, it's a lot of work and a pretty intense schedule. We sit on a committee as requested by the town, so it's not our initiative, obviously, but we're supporting them. I probably mentioned in the past the group was broken up into 4 subgroups. Those subgroups have finished their work, and now we've kind of consolidated into a final group to prepare the draft report. So that's kind of where we are right now. There's a lot of reviewing and writing and editing and collaborating going on with the members of the collaborative. Once the report's completed, the town's plan is to put it onto the town website and publicize the fact that it's out there with email blasts, etc., and solicit community input and constituent input. And I'm not sure exactly how they're going to collect all that, but I assume it's going to be emails and testimony and other things to try to get everyone's input as much as possible that they can get. And then there'll be some time after that to integrate the comments, make the corrections, add the different views, or however, depending on what kinds of comments they get. And then they are on a very tight time frame. They will review and formally approve the document, and then submit it to the state by April 1st. So it's been a very intense few weeks, and again, we're participating and doing what we're being asked to do as much as we can, and happy to help. So that's kind of where I think that's where the task force, where the working group is.
Thank you, John. Community service.
I just have one statement before.
I'm sorry, Sandra.
You're good. On the document, my name is spelled incorrectly. It's Saundra.
Thank you. Noted.
Thank you.
I apologize, Sandra. That's my fault.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions or comments for John?
I have a question for John. You sent out an email last week or something where you were collecting stories of anybody who had an interaction with the Niskayuna police. I was just curious. Did y'all get anybody who was collecting narratives?
I was part of a small group that was asking for those. I did not personally receive any, but I don't know if other people have on the task force. I'm not sure. I think they have, but I didn't necessarily see any. No.
All right, I was just curious.
Sure.
I'd just like to not necessarily comment to the report per se, but just provide some information. A few weeks back, I actually was interviewed by a company that was doing a racial and diversity audit of the town of Niskayuna, and they were asking me about my own experiences and opinion of the local police force. I thought I'd just share that with you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Doctor. And that gets to how complicated and big this project is. That's a whole nother effort that the town is conducting. It's actually in parallel with the group that I'm working with. It's a company called CNA, and I think they're publishing their report in the next few weeks. So that's another group of people that's working with the town, but I don't have any visibility on what they're doing. But you're right. There's that's going on in parallel, and I'm glad they reached out.
Yes.
And John Paul Briggs, I believe that ultimately that CNA report will be incorporated into the work you're doing.
Okay, great.
I presume it is. And in fact, there's for the task force information, there is going to be a public presentation of that tomorrow night.
Is that on the town website or the town calendar?
It is. It's at, I think it's at 7 o'clock. But it's a very informative report. It talks about a lot of good recommendations that the police department requires. And I'm looking for the invitation. Yes, it's tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And I'll make sure that the entire task force, if you haven't, I'll have Lisa send everybody an invite to that. I think everyone would be interested in hearing that. It's a very thorough report. They interviewed a lot of the police department. So they do a lot of comparisons about racial quotas and equities. So it's an interesting report. So I encourage everyone, if they have the chance tomorrow night, it's from 6 to 7, but I'll be sure Lisa make sure everybody gets an invite.
Will it also be recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be recorded and then it'll be out on YouTube after the next day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think we're all interested in that. And I'm sure all of us will try to make to visit it. So we'll look for that invite. Is it by invitation only, or are all town citizens able to join that meeting tomorrow?
I think it's anybody can join it.
Okay, great.
I am only speaking for myself. I am not speaking for the group and collaborative of people that are working on this report. I do just want to say that so much work has gone into this drafted report that I don't think that it's going to be possible to incorporate that data into this report because it is due within the next couple days. But I think it's important for us to recognize that as a group. But I am just saying that it is unlikely that that information will be able to be reviewed and thoroughly discussed with the collaborative. And again, that is just me. I am not speaking for anyone else.
So the town board is calling for a public hearing for that report that John's working on to be for public comment. And that public hearing is going to be held at the March, I believe, one of the March meetings. The report actually has to be filed with the state of New York by April 1st. That's the timeline. But there is going to be a public hearing for input from the public into that report. So there'll be a lot of, I agree, Julian, there'll be a lot of work to finalize that by April 1st. But I presume that the CNA, even if it's appended to it, I presume the CNA report, this audit that was done by this company, is going to be at least appended to this, to the report John's working on. That's got to be submitted to the state.
Absolutely. I am also working on that report as well. And I think the draft is due on the 16th, right, John?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think so. And then in March, we're hoping for public comment. I'm just hoping that in the final report, the CNA report can be discussed. But if we have less than a week to incorporate this, I think that would be rather difficult.
There's going, between the draft that's due next week and the April 1st, I suspect there'll be a number of amendments or changes to that report.
Absolutely. I do agree. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on. Jillian, would you like to report for community services, please?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, Liz cannot be here tonight. And I have a very brief report. We have not had a meeting since our last official task force meeting. However, I did complete a draft of the roadmap. I am hoping for comment from other people in the working group. And I have had great conversations with several people that are in that group. And it seems like there is a drive to start work within the next month. And that is my only update.
Great. Thank you so much. I will briefly share that the town finance and town admin work groups I will be chairing both of those groups. We have several task force members who have joined the groups. We have completed the roadmap and have several we've created a timeline of activities and tasks that we intend to do over the next 3 to 6 months with some measurable outcomes. And we are scheduling our first meeting for sometime next week. And one of our first goals is to identify data that we would like to request, and as well as beginning with a document review. So we're moving forward, and we anticipate having more to report at the next task force meeting. And we have one other work group in that list, which is the public services work group. Kay, do you want to add anything?
Sure, I'll make it even briefer than what Jillian said. I just claimed the work group on Friday. So this is an invitation for other task force members. If you'd like to join the public services work group, that is the work group that will deal with the town buildings, engineering, highways, water and sewer, recycling, and transfer center. Please send me an email and we'll get started with scheduling our first meeting and working on the roadmap. Thank you.
And I just want to note that you'll see some names on these work groups, and some names from the task force have yet to join a work group. So I will probably be sending out some personal emails to encourage and gently nudge people to select a working group, if not two, to join and start moving us forward. And Dale, I think that's,
We didn't.
I have data and best
Data-
practices.
Pretty and Ari.
So Ari and I are the co-chairs of this work group. We had a meeting on the 27th. One of the last task force meeting, I had, suggested we have a public task force collaborative meeting on Feb 2nd, and that didn't come through because people were concerned. They were nervous about two things. One is, what I think one of the concerns was, what if there's a malicious intent? Because we're opening the work group up to members of the community. What if somebody with malicious intent joins, and how do we deal with that? I think that was one of the biggest concerns, and not knowing who was going to be part of the work group. So we talked about how could we get work group members to be comfortable? What would it take for work group members to be comfortable? And the reason I keep saying let's invite community members is because, say we come up with this great report, fantastic report, everything is evidence-based, we have this data, it looks great, very nice. But if people are not part of it, they don't listen. And we really cannot do a lot of work we do without getting buy-in from the community. So that's why one of the processes I was going to suggest is, that's why I think it's important to get community involved. So anyway, so that's that. So in the work group, I sent out our notes to everybody. And they had like 5 things that were identified that would help members feel comfortable. As a work group, we already filled out that roadmap the roadmap or whatever you call it, a while back. And I had presented it a number of times, and that's what we were going to do. So in terms of, I'm just looking at my laptop here, they said they would like a little more information about the work group. So based on the questions that people had, I again took up what we had done last time and filled out to the best of my ability, and I gave it to the leadership members, how the work group aligns with the charge that we're given. I tried to explain that. I can share the agenda and slides. Like I said, it was ready for the first meeting. The first meeting is usually lighter because you're trying to get people comfortable. What I'm using is a systems approach. And it's one of the first activities, which will take at least 3 meetings, is developing this shared understanding. So I have like a draft slide that was for Feb 2nd, but once we have a meeting date set for this public work group meeting, whenever members feel comfortable, I will probably modify depending on what is happening around, because I try to make it very local so people can relate to it. The other part is the technology. There seemed to be a lot of concern with the technology. We hear about these Zoom calls and people get even more nervous. We heard what happened with the Albany Neighborhood Association, how hackers with malicious intent hacked into it. They were able to complete the meeting in private mode. And the TU had a lot of good advice about how to avoid that. But having said that, the questions we had for technology, so I know Lisa and Paul are on this group, so it may help to kind of clarify a little. So first, I also want to thank the town for giving the task force the email, because that will be very helpful, because it adds credibility to whenever we say give information, and it's got a Niskayuna kind of end to it, at Niskayuna. So the question I had for Lisa is, when we set the date, will you be there throughout the meeting? So
I can.
Yeah.
I can be there. Basically, Rosemary Jaquith asked me to proctor your meeting. So whatever you guys need, they're making me available to you if that's what you need. So if you have meetings that you want.
I think what the members are worried about is, because we will open it up to the public. To be honest, I don't expect a mob. I expect maybe 8, even 20, but probably that was being ambitious. So I expect a small group. There's a registration, so we'll kind of know who's on the work group. I think people are concerned about the security of this. Will folks with malicious intent be able to get into that group?
So one of the things, I actually, once we get off here, I'm going to look into that thing you talked about, because I had not heard about that in the news, but that I do want to look into that. One of the reasons that the town decided to do Google Meets and not to do Zoom for town meetings under COVID was because the security is not there for Zoom. So I don't know if that group was doing Zoom. And I know I worked on a task force, not task force, it was a committee for the school district this summer about reopening. And that was another thing that was brought up repeatedly, was that they only would allow, like the state would only allow the districts to use Google Meets because they have better security. So
Okay.
I do, from what I understand, I do believe that the security is there for you. I had talked to Kay about this earlier today. There is a way to remove someone from a meeting. And if you remove them twice, then they're blocked from the meeting. So that would be, because you're obviously sending out the link to the public, so they could share it with anybody. Anybody could get access to it. But I do think, and the moderator, which is me, would be able to remove that person if requested.
Okay. Lisa, though we're sending it out to the public, we're asking for registration. So
Okay.
we will know who's coming. We'll have an email. So
Okay,
there is,
so you
yeah.
wouldn't be publishing the meeting link, is what you're saying. That would be by
Right.
invite only.
Yeah,
Okay.
only the folks who register will be able to come in, just like this meeting.
Okay, so in that case, if you've been in the meeting before, I don't have to let you into the meeting. If someone's never been to the meeting before, I have to accept their, if they don't, like, say someone has bad intentions and they forward it to somebody that wants to cause problems, I would have to let them in. So if you decide, like, we're only letting people in that got the link, like, that would be one way to protect yourself from that. But we would be able to remove people in any case.
Yeah. All right. And then another question is, since this is a public meeting, and I know that we're not going to do breakout sessions, it sounded too complicated, recording breakout. So no breakout sessions. And we'll be doing registrations. Will it be streamed as well, or only recorded? I wasn't sure about that.
That is up to Paul. I don't know the meeting laws as well as he does, so he would have to let you know.
Okay, so that was my only question. I think the main issue was that little concern about, whether we
Absolutely.
would. Yeah.
I think
So-
I will make sure, we'll talk more about it if you want, but I will definitely make sure I look into that meeting that you mentioned that got invaded. And we have not had that at the town. I don't go to all the meetings. Paul goes to more of them than I do, but as far as I know, we've not had any issues.
Yeah. It happens mostly with Zoom, and because if they're not careful with the host.
Zoom can get hacked.
Yeah.
That's
So-
definitely true and in the news. And I know from the school that that's the reason they were not allowed to use Zoom, even though some people were more comfortable with it.
Right. Well, thank you, Lisa, for answering
Sure.
the question. So that's really what it is. I am open to having a meeting with the public whenever task force members and our work group members feel comfortable. Also, work group members said, could I do a dry run of the meeting? I offered we could do a dry run or even an entire meeting. Like I said, it's a methodology I'm using. So it's a 3-part methodology, and it's what it will give us at the end, which is very important, is people's mental models. How do they think about equity and what affects equity? And those mental models are very helpful because it helps us figure out where we can influence change, what kind of data do we need, what kind of narratives should we be looking for. So having that shared understanding will give us a lot of information that we can then dig deeper into.
I'm happy to do a practice run if you want. Whatever you'd like to set up, you can just reach out to me and let me know. You can email me or call
this,
me.
I think the work group members were talking about doing a practice run with the entire task force. So I'm open to that. having looked at the calendar, the town calendar, and seeing what conflicts there are, it looks like the first Tuesday and third Tuesdays are the best for these meetings with no conflicts. Thursdays, you begin to start getting conflicts. So if, say, tomorrow I sent the material and it got reviewed, I would say we could have the meeting probably on March 16th, which is a third Tuesday.
I think we have some questions, Pretty. I feel like there's a lot of hands raised.
I was just finishing what I had on my list. Okay, I'll keep
feel
quiet.
like people have some questions.
Okay.
Dale and Doc.
Okay.
Dale, you can go first if you'd like. You. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Pretty, I have quite a few questions. My first question, as you may have noticed, I'm a process person, and I received a copy of your minutes to the meeting that you had, and it was received 2 days ago, I think, on the 8th. And my question is, were these minutes reviewed and commented on by all members of the work
they
group?
were supposed to
Let me finish.
Sorry.
Were they commented on and approval by all the members of the work group before submission to all members of the task force?
I asked for comments by last Wednesday, and I did get one comment which I highlighted as saying we need more discussion on this. It was regarding a paper, on what was said in the paper, and you see the minutes I have kind of highlighted saying this should be discussed at our next meeting. But yes, I only got one comment, and I shared with you what I had sent out with everybody. And if everybody still wants to change something, I'm still open to changing. But like I said, the part
I sent quite a few comments
about Sherry Arnstein's ladder of participation, there was a question about that, which I need to go through again at the next meeting.
I mean, I think, I sent comments and feedback. Did you get that?
Yes, those were the ones. Remember, Angela? I said, I think the comments.
I don't think I saw the final, but I did send some comments.
Didn't you? You kind of made the comments, right, Angela? No?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did I take your comments? You're saying no?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'll have to take a look at the final. I don't know if as a group we finalized those minutes.
Yeah, I think so. I
think that's what Dale is indicating.
We will discuss.
Actually, yes, that was my question, because generally before submitting it to the entire task force, you might have heard something and you might understand it one way, but when we get into a discussion with others may have interpreted something another way. So that's why it's important to, before finalizing it, to get feedback on the document so everyone's thoughts and comments could be included in there.
Yeah, usually when I don't hear comments, I assumed it's okay. I did hear from Angela and we did have a conversation and I incorporated it, and that's why I did that. So since nobody else commented, I figured they were okay with it.
Okay. Then my second question then goes to whether or not the data and best practices group has collected any data or researched any best practices, even best practices for conducting the open meeting with the public. Has any of that groundwork been done, and what are we relying on for how we're conducting this? And I do understand that you're relying on a particular methodology and a study that you've shared with us, and I've taken a look at the information. So my question is, has there been any additional data collection or best practices research?
From my perspective, we've not officially kicked off the data and best practices work group. For me, this is the methodologies I'm trying to tell you, is that it's a systems approach. So first you have to agree on what the systems is and what our boundaries are. And that's why I'm trying to get the group off the ground. It's important. And that is the part I was trying to stress. And everybody agreed at the meeting that it's important to get the work group, our community members that we want early rather than after we finish the work. So no, we haven't started because we're trying to get our first public task force work group meeting off. And as soon as that is done and we begin to map out our mental models, we will start doing that work. But no, we haven't done that.
Okay.
Doc, you had a question.
Oh, just first, just a quick comment. I want to commend you. I like the way that you attempt to apply data to the problem-solving process, and it's really commendable. You had mentioned something about interacting with the public, and I thought that Kate in her report had said something to the effect that we weren't supposed to interact with the public.
Yeah. So the process, okay, interacting with the public. No, we can interact with the public. We cannot interact with the media, but we can co-create with the public. So I don't. So Paul,
I thought she said the media and the public.
No,
So,
I'm not
Doc,
talking about the media.
Doc,
Paul,
we
let me
cannot
clarify.
interact
Paul,
with.
I can invite public to work with the work group members, right? Okay, I cannot.
Oh, so Kate, could you clarify that for us?
Yes. No, sorry. So the clarification is that we're not allowed to engage with them one-on-one, but we are allowed to invite public to the media, to any open meeting that we have.
I see. I understand.
Is that the correct understanding, Paul? I think last time you had said that if we are inviting public, you would encourage that it's an open meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted a clarification on that.
Yeah.
That's all my questions.
Thank you.
John, hand raised.
Yes, okay, thank you. And I am part of Pretty's group, and I do want to acknowledge Pretty. She has been intense and clear about being sure that we include the public in these forums and discussions, and I completely agree with that. And I have also spoken to her about this. I'm one of the people that is not as comfortable maybe as others. And maybe it's my engineering background or my project management background or my consulting background, but and you know this is an opinion I've shared with Pretty and others. I'm just so it's clear I'm an advocate for a pretty detailed plan, a pretty detailed script, a pretty detailed controls over the process. I don't know if it's called a lesson plan or whatever we want to call it, but you know, I do think it's important to lay out how the meeting is going to be run, who's coordinated the interaction, how people are invited, and I read the article, Jamie, that you sent us. I'm actually less concerned about a person who's obviously there to disrupt the meeting, and I'm sure that there are lots of tools to get rid of people like that. I'm more worried about the person that overspeaks his 3 minutes or keeps bringing up the same point and doesn't allow the group to move on, has an agenda. I think we're lucky that we have a charge that is so important. And at the same time, I think we have to be, in my view, just over prepared. I've heard certainly lots of public forums that have gone well, but I've also seen and heard of lots of public forums that are frustrating and confusing and run off on tangents. And I just think that my vote is, before we open this up to interactions with the public, I think we just need to be prepared. So I suggested 2 things to Pretty, and I think maybe she's still maybe suggesting them or working on them. One's a very detailed plan about how we're going to handle invitations, input, phone calls, attendees, email input, letters. I don't know all the forums, but to figure out how we're going to handle how we're going to collect them, and how we're going to respond to them. And then practice. I would recommend a practice maybe just with work group, maybe with a work group in the leadership committee, maybe the task force. I think Pretty's got a lot of very, very important ideas on how to build and co-create, and I'm just suggesting that we do that, with us as a group, in part to practice, in part to get more comfortable, and in part to build our own experience as we work toward including input from the community. I think input from the community is essential, and it's so important that I think it's important to be prepared and ready. So that's my.
Yeah, John, this is going to be a very different meeting for you, okay? I'll tell you, to be honest, it won't be like, it's what we call equity is a wicked problem. It's not something you can write in detail because things don't work that way. Saying that, I would be really, really interested, if you all are interested, the task force, of doing the shared understanding exercise with you and drawing this, what we call, it's called a causal map, but really what it is, a map. We have certain way we think, and we assume somebody else understands, just like you said, what we think, just like what you said, Dale. But this is making it explicit, putting it down in writing. And I would be very interested in working through that activity with you and also with the work group, because everybody, when we put it down, we all think about it differently. And our map and what I do as a collaboration with the community may be different because we are all different individuals. But it gives us a lot of rich information. And according to one of the people, I don't know if you've heard of this educator called Donella Meadows, she comes up, where are the leverage points? And she says the highest leverage point is if you can change somebody's, or if people can change, we can't change it. If people can see and change their mental models. And it's very hard to do because we're talking about cultural change. But so it's very hard to explain what it is if you haven't been through it. But if you would like, that could be what I could work with you, is develop this shared understanding, at some meeting. Like I said, it would take a while. It would take about an hour. But I could do a short form in 20 minutes, but it's not a shared understanding. It's just saying, well, this is how I would draw the lines. But the shared understanding is picking each of our brains. Yeah?
I think, for one, Pretty, I think that would be amazing, and I think we'd all really benefit from that. So for me, that would be fantastic.
So we have two hands raised, Angela and Kay.
Angela, do you want to go?
Okay, Kay, I can go. Okay. Yeah. So just two quick thoughts. I think for this committee or this work group in particular, I think it'll be very important to clearly identify each person's role, just to ensure that it is a collaborative group. And then I think getting to Dale's point that she made a little bit earlier about sort of what has been done thus far. I think potentially maybe differentiating, although at some point integrating the qualitative and the quantitative data pieces, as just based on some feedback here in the meeting, that it will be important for us to sort of clearly identify the aspects of community engagement approaches, but maybe there are some other more sort of quantitative data pieces that we can get to faster, like the composition of town, groups and committees. We could probably get that data faster, but then more of the sort of community engagement approach maybe can be fleshed out more. Okay, Kate.
Thanks. Actually, you gave me a great segue, because I was my question was in line to something you mentioned, Angela, is how do we see the data and best practices group supporting the other services group, other work groups, as they look for data collection, right? I mean, the name says data and best practices. So are we considering data and best practices as the first spot of saying, what can we do about data collection? Or are you suggesting that, to Angela's point, that the work groups should independently go about collecting their own data? Because
Yes,
if
yeah. So talking to both of yours, data means a lot of different things to different people, right? It's qualitative, it's quantitative, and you're right. You can very easily get where the quantitative data are. For me, it's important to really get a sense of how things connect with each other, because then you have a richer way of looking at data. Otherwise, we jump into data and we get really busy. And you're right. Right now, I know where the data are, and you can get it. But this community engagement part also takes a lot of time and takes a lot of thinking. And so that's why I have not been, if people want to get in with the data, I would say go ahead. But this part is also going to take time. And since we are all have limited resources, I would like to start with the community engagement group. And then when we work with the group, it looks like they're responding to the community rather than already making the data, and people are going to say, you've already done the work. What do you need us here for? So that's why I have been kind of saying, I know where the data are. They're not going to go anywhere. It's going to be there. And we will start. If we can get these meetings, the earlier we can get these meetings started, the quicker we can start with the other work. However, if members of our work group are interested in starting earlier, that would be fine too. I would hold back for myself only because I know how much energy needs to go in this and how clear I have to keep my mind. So I would be open to it, but I would then say, if you want to do that, that's fine, and we can contribute. I'm not one of those very directive persons, but I think the systems work is important and often not done from my experience. And it gives you a new way of looking at data, not only looking at what the data are or why you're looking at it, more importantly, because otherwise you can get very overwhelmed. So saying that, I hesitate to start personally on the data work, but if people want to start with it, I'd be happy to kind of coordinate and have a discussion and see who wants to work on it. But like I said, for me, my focus right now is trying to get this public partner kind of group going. And right, like I said, it'll take 3 meetings and then we will jump in, and the data are there. Like I said, I know where they are. We've already been putting on our shared drive a matrix with sources, where we can get it. It's, what framework. I can tell you then after we do the mental maps, why we're collecting it or why we're not collecting something, But anyway, so that's my only comment on that.
Dale, I saw your hand raised and then it's not raised. Are you?
I actually, okay, I'll just make a quick comment. I neglected to thank you earlier, and I just wanted to thank you for your hard work on this work group. I just wanted to pick up on Angela's comment and also a little bit on Kay's comment, and just ask that we discuss this a little bit more at the next leadership meeting with maybe a bit of a roadmap and, as John has suggested, a lesson guide so that we can get a clear picture of the work and how the work group plans to accomplish its tasks. Because right now it's not very clear, I think, aside from the idea that we're going to move forward with interacting with the public right away. I don't think there's any opposition really to interacting with the public. And my personal opinion is that we can use the talents of all the members within the work group and maybe also work on some quantitative data in addition to the qualitative data that will come out of the interaction with the community. So maybe we'll discuss that a little bit more in depth at the next leadership meeting so that we can get a better idea of it. I think it would be a little bit more appropriate there. Also, I also just want to remind all work group leadership and all work group members that the leadership is here to support and to facilitate and collaborate with getting work done. We are the pipeline to the town. So we will discuss dates, discuss focus groups, surveys, that sort of thing, so we can get it expedited for the group. We are the point people that are going to interact with the town in the future. So that's just a quick reminder of that. And I think since we've had a discussion of all of the work groups at this time, we'll now move on to additional topics unless I'm moving too fast. Okay.
Can we maybe table that for the next meeting since we're running as late as we are at this point? Can that as an additional topic, unless it's going to be especially brief?
Pretty, how long do you think this presentation will be?
Again, it's not a presentation, it's very interactive. So it depends. What it is basically trying to get a shared understanding of, what addresses equity. And so people will brainstorm and we will come up with some kind of why you think this affects equity and what affects this. So I could give you a demonstration, which would take you 20 minutes. But if we do a real activity, that would take an hour, where we would get our mental maps kind of drawn in.
So maybe because we're now at 7:42 and the meeting is going into its second hour, maybe what we will do is, I'm going to invite feedback. Maybe what we'll do is table it for this discussion and put it on as our first agenda item for our March meeting.
Okay.
Do I have any other comments regarding tabling this issue for now?
That's a great idea, Dale.
I move that we table that item until the next meeting.
Anyone second that motion? Thank you, Kay. Is there anyone who objects to that motion? Hearing no objections, we'll table the additional topic of open task force plan self-evaluation for the first substantive item on our next calendar on, give me 1 second. Let me just look at the calendar very quickly before entertaining any motions to adjourn. And of course, my phone is not responding to me very quickly right now. Okay. March.
It might be March 10th.
It's March, believe it or not, it's
March
also
10th.
on the 10th. So it's March 10th at 6 p.m. And we will all reconvene. Before I make a motion to adjourn, are there any additional topics that anyone would like to introduce at this time? Seeing no hands raised, I will take a motion to adjourn. David, seconded by Angela. So at this point, hearing any objections to adjourning? Hearing no objections, the meeting is adjourned. I thank you all.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you, Paul. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks all.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Paul, very much.
Good night. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.